Hello, Chapter 28. Jerusalem rolled by the van's windows in all its splendor. Max thought it was beautiful and amazing and historic. She could totally understand why it was one of Albert Einstein's favorite cities, even though he only visited it once in 1923. At the heart of the Holy Land, Jerusalem was sacred to so many of the world's major religions. The Jews built their first temple here as a home for the Ark of the Covenant. It is also where Christians believe Jesus Christ was crucified and rose from the dead. For Muslims, Jerusalem was the very spot where the prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven to receive God's word. While the rest of the group ate lunch at a restaurant called Manu Ba Shuk near Hebrew University, they served falafel, hummus, kebabs. Max and Annika, the German master of logic, hurried over to the Levi building on the university's campus in the Jivat Ram neighborhood. That's where the Albert Einstein archives are located, said Annika, who loved Einstein almost as much as Max. Max figured that's how friendships started. You found something you had in common and built from there. She was willing to give it a try. Annika's father was a professor who knew a professor who knew another professor who knew an archivist at the Hebrew University. Albert Einstein was a founder of the Hebrew University and one of its most loyal supporters. The kids from CMI would be able to see several of his 80,000 papers, artifacts, and treasures stored in the collection. Everything from Einstein's 1896 report card to his handwritten manuscript explaining the theory of relativity to what looked like Einstein's action figure. Max and Annika, who weren't as interested in lunch as everybody else, would see them first. "This is amazing," said Max, who was in heaven as she soaked up everything the archives had to offer. The building reminded her of a much larger version of her suitcase stuffed with Einstein memorabilia. The university has plans to make a new museum to host these archives in an abandoned planetarium, although the Prime Minister wanted to build a museum in the shape of Einstein's head, said Annika. So his writings would be back in his head? Annika laughed. I suppose so. Of course, a lot of this material is now available online, which makes a great deal of logical sense. True, said Max, but it's more fun to see it up close and personal. Agreed, said Annika. They were studying some of Einstein's letters on social issues, such as nuclear disarmament and the Arab-Israeli conflict. In a letter to the editor of the newspaper, Professor Einstein expressed his hope that the conflict between Jews and Arabs would be resolved by a council composed of representatives from both groups. His suggestion in this letter to the editor is quite sound, added Annika. It might even work today. Annika and Max toured the archives for more than 2 hours. Max memorized everything she could, snapping photographs of documents in her mind. It was helpful that Annika spoke German, the language most of Einstein's personal papers were written in. She was an excellent translator. One letter, written in English, cracked Max up. Dear Mr. Einstein, I'm a little girl of 6. I saw your picture in the paper. I think you ought to have your hair cut so you can look better. Cordially yours, Anne. She stopped laughing when Annika tapped her on the shoulder. Max? Where are the others? What do you mean? We've been here for 2 hours and 13 minutes. Surely Klaus has finished eating lunch by now. You're right. Maybe they decided to go someplace else. That doesn't make sense, said Annika. We agreed to meet here. Well, the restaurant is only a few blocks away. We could walk back and see if they're still there. Annika nodded. A wise and prudent suggestion. They thank the curators of the Einstein archives. Here's some pictures of Einstein. Some drawings with different hairdos. Maybe that's what Anne was hoping he would do with his hair. We hope to return with our classmates, said Annika. If not today, then someday soon. They reached the lobby and saw two suspicious men in black suits lurking under the covered breezeway outside. One was staring at his phone, reading its screen. The other looked like he was waiting for someone to exit the building. Do you know the phone number for the CMI? Max whispered to Annika. Yes, I have it programmed in my smartphone. Good. We need to call Carl. No, wait. Isabel. She's a much faster driver.